Hello, everyone, and welcome to the midweek program here at the Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake. I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum, and today we are at the Cascade Garden because we have a very special plant visiting us today, a plant that needed a bit of security, and we figured putting it in the middle of our Cascade Garden was a lot easier than constructing a new moat for it. So, we are here. We have an Amorphophallus titanum here in the garden today. That is the Titan arum. It is the plant with the largest unbranching inflorescence in the world, and we happen to have one in bloom right now. So we have Diane Mays, who works at the conservatory at NC State, who has been growing this little guy for us for the past however long he's been growing, and she's going to be talking with us today about Wolfgang and Titan arums and all that. And so we are so grateful to have you here for this presentation. And with that, I think we can pass things over to Mark and Diane to talk a little bit about this corpse flower.
All right.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us today. If you couldn't join us in person, it's unfortunate we don't get this in Smellorama. I'm Mark Weathington. I'm director here at the JC Raulston Arboretum. I'm with Diane Mays, who grew this wonderful plant. Why don't you, so before we get started on Wolfgang, talk a little bit just about the teaching greenhouses and conservatory where you're working, so people get a sense of why we're growing this.
Right. So on campus, we have 25,000 square feet of teaching greenhouses. It is a College of Ag and Life Sciences greenhouse. So it services horticulture, mainly teaching, undergraduate teaching, but some research, and also plant pathology, plant biology, even biology is in the greenhouse, crop science. And we've got 12 sections, and many of the sections are used for labs such as plant propagation, greenhouse management, floriculture, and the students learn how to grow plants, propagate plants. And then we have 3 sections that are permanent collections of a diverse group of plants that students can come and learn about morphology, adaptation, diversity. And one of the diverse plants that we wanted to bring into the collection was the corpse flower. We have a lot of aroids, or plants in the Araceae family, which this plant is in, and we definitely wanted something a little bit out of the norm, beyond the philodendrons or the peace lilies, and the corpse flower has certainly done that for us. So. We're not open to the public. It's really just for teaching. But when we did have one of the corpse flowers, we showcased its 3 bloom sessions, 2016, 2019, 2021. We opened the greenhouse to the public because we wanted to share this wonderful plant. But it got to be really crowded. It was really, I see some people were smiling because they were like, yes, it was quite, everybody had to suck in their gut so that everybody else could get around. And then we found that the parking was hard, and we had to limit people to 15 minutes each, and it just felt rude to start scooting people out. So then we thought, well, what would be the next great place to showcase this? And it was a no-brainer to ask the Arboretum staff to let us bring it here. So I think it's worked out great.
Yeah, and so the 3 other years where you had one flowering, that was Lupin, who was one of our graduate student at the times.
Yes.
And now this is something I've been asked is this Lupin? And it's not. It's Wolfgang.
It's not. It's not even a brother or sister. No sibling of Lupin. It is a totally different lineage, and so same species, different plant.
Yeah, and that's something. The Amorphophallus titanum are rare enough, and really, that people follow. Where the parentage is. We know the parents of Wolfgang from Ohio State University. We know which ones they are. And so we do track that. It's almost like, the breeding books for
Yeah.
endangered animals. You go to the zoo and you see, this is part of a project with that. So
Yeah.
that helps keep the genetics moving around, keeps plants healthy, and keeps plants living and thriving, which is good because they're from Sumatra, and anything that grows in a rainforest is really kind of on the getting towards endangered because of loss of habitat and that type of thing.
And that's honestly why that's a good point, because that's why we ended up with Wolfgang. We got it from OSU, and they had cross-pollinated 2 of their corpse flowers that just happened to bloom 10 days apart from each other. And the greenhouse manager there, she's since retired, but Joan Leonard had reached out to other universities and said, we've got all of these corms, much like a bulb. We've got these corms we would like to distribute so that we can get the genetic diversity out there, have other people grow this up so then they can pollinate them, and we can share the joy that is the corpse flower, plus also get the genetic differences out there. So,
So there's some great lists online. If you go to our website and go to more information, one of the links at the bottom is for our sister garden, JLBG, Juniper Level Botanic Garden. They have a list with as much info as they can get from every bloom that we know of corpse flower. And I would imagine that by now Wolfgang is in there with the height and width. He was texting me this morning saying, "Did we get a final height? Did we get a width?" And so we do have that. You talked about the flowering. It's like many plants in Araceae. It has male and female flowers, but they're separate on the plant. You want to explain how that works and timing?
Yeah. So you do have the male and the female. I always remember this as ladies first. The female flowers are receptive 24 hours before the male flowers release pollen. And by that time, the female flowers are not receptive anymore. And it's very purposefully done so that they don't self-pollinate and they can get that genetic diversity. So there has to be another corpse flower for insects to bring that pollen into the female flowers when they're receptive. So, and the flowers are encased in the bottom area, right where you can see that one little protective leaf that's now brown. It's kind of encased. It's down there at the base. And tomorrow, I believe, is when we're going to cut out a little rectangle so that we can harvest some pollen, and you'll be able to see those individual flowers in there. So. Yeah,
and that's, you should say, that Ohio State sent us the corms, but another thing that like to do is send pollen out where other ones are flowering so that we share the pollen as well. We're not pollinating this one though.
Right.
Because.
Right. So we've read that some corpse flowers, the corm has died after it's been pollinated. In 2019, when Lupin bloomed, the grad student who, I don't know that he's here right now, but he did decide to pollinate it. And so in order to get some pollen, he reached out to different universities, University of Wisconsin and University of Florida, and both of them overnighted like a little centrifuge vial of their pollen from their plants. You can keep the pollen and store it for up to 24 hours. 1 year, big difference. You can store the pollen up to 1 year in the freezer, and it's still viable. And so because there is such a large space of female flowers, he ended up taking like 3 rows at the top for one university. and 3 rows at the bottom, so he could keep them separate in case we did get some seed set. So he knew which was which to keep those crosses information. And it did not end up working, but yeah, we were able to reach out and get some pollen from 2 other universities, and yeah, it's fun times. So.
And I know somebody who's watching our social media was seeing people refer to this as the century plant. It is not a century plant. That's an agave. That's a native North American plant, but it's not a quick between seed and flowering. It's not a quick turnaround. How old is Wolfgang?
So the cross was made by OSU in 2013. We got a 3 to 4 year old corm from them in 2017. And so here we are, 2023, it's 9 to 10 years old. And then even after it has been pollinated, that the seed set takes 6 to 9 months while it's on the plant for those seeds to get ripe, and then you take however long it germinates, develops a corm, and so that's why OSU had a 3 to 4 year old corm before giving them out to dispersing them out to other people. So.
Yeah, I find this a fascinating plant because, like we said, this Amorphous titanum comes from Sumatra. And Indonesian plants usually don't have relatives that are hardy in central North Carolina, but we actually grow outside on our grounds quite a few different Amorphophallus mostly from Vietnam and China, Taiwan. But then we grow probably close to about 70 species in the Araceae family, and it's a family that people grow almost more than anything else, especially right now. The hot plants on the internet are the monsteras and the philodendrons and things like that, the house plants, and those are all in the aroid family, but also you had mentioned peace lilies, and really the flower is the same thing. It's that, I learned that peace lily is jack in the pulpit. You got the jack and you got the pulpit, the spadix, which actually has the flowers and the spathe that goes around it. But we have native ones. We have the Aracema triphyllum. I can't remember what's the common name for that? I'm bad with that.
I don't know that one.
And the sometimes called green dragon, Aracema dracontium. Those are native ones. And so they fit every niche. They're for herbaceous plants. They're vines, they're corms and bulbs, rhizomes, really go everywhere except for trees. We will, Blake, feel free to jump in if we have questions from anybody. I'm very proud of Blake because with plants, I try to be very pedantic to get them correct. People often say this has the largest flower in the plant world, which it very much doesn't. The flowers are very, very small down at the base. And some people get closer with largest inflorescence, which is a group of flowers together. That is not correct. It is the largest unbranched inflorescence in the plant world. But the largest flower is actually from the same region, from Indonesia and Sumatra, called Rafflesia, after Raffles. Those are hard to grow in cultivation. It's a parasite on a parasite on a tree. So, but they look like giant starfish.
Now that's evolution right there.
It is, yeah. And they can be like a meter across. And like Wolfgang here, they are maroon and smell bad because the pollinators in that part of the world are mostly flies and beetles and things that eat dead things. And so you have a maroon flower that looks like bloody meat and the smell of kind of decaying flesh or something unpleasant, which I have found really sticks to you for a while.
Yeah, I was thinking I'm going to go home smelling like this thing. So
Yeah. And then, because you got to know the other one, India is the largest, home to the plant with the largest branched inflorescence, and that is a palm called the talipot palm, Corypha umbraculifera. And I've seen it in flower one time, and it's kind of one of those really exciting but kind of disappointing things because it's a palm, it'll grow for 60, 70, 80 years, and then it flowers, and it is just this massive 20, 30 feet tall and wide. There's just this massive white flowers at the top, and then it dies. The whole palm dies after you've been growing it for 60, 70 years. So,
wow.
But it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, the timing on this is, short.
Yes, very short. Very
So-
short. It takes so much energy to generate the heat, and the heat of the flower does, the inflorescence does heat up to like human body temperature. And again, very purposeful in that it helps just radiate that and volatilize that stench. And then this massive inflorescence takes so much energy that it's one and done, 24 to 48 hours, and it's done what it needed to do. It drew in its pollinators, and then then the cycle starts all over again.
So jumping off of that, we did have somebody online was asking how long do we expect it to stay in bloom? So given that this just opened last night, what do you think?
So the spathe is already starting to close back up over to the spadix. So this might be it. I think this morning was peak time. And over the night, it might just close up over the spadix. It doesn't flop down. The spathe doesn't for right now. It'll close up over the spadix. And then 4 to 5 days from now, the spadix will just collapse. And we'll just wait for everything to naturally die back. And then we'll clean all that off. And then I'll take the corm out of the pot, get all the media and all the soil off of it, and then we want to weigh it. And then we'll repot it and let it stay dormant for its 2 to 4 months, and then the next structure will be a leaf. So.
Okay, and going off of that, we did have somebody say that they noted that it appears to be closing up, but they used the word petal to describe this space. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about morphology?
So a bract?
Yeah, it's a modified leaf, a bract that surrounds that the inflorescence, the spadix, and so it's like on a dogwood. Those petals are not truly petals. There's a cluster of flowers in the center, and what's surrounding that are bracts, modified leaves or poinsettias. It's quick, and that's one of the things that's so exciting about this. Something like what is a true century plant, which does not take 100 years to come into flower, but the agaves, when they flower, it lasts a long time, and even after it fades, you've got the stalk there, and you can kind of see how impressive it is. This is really, it goes. It's there, and then it's gone. Although I have to say, the leaf, when you get it with a good sized corm with the leaf on there, it's really impressive to me by itself.
Yeah. So as far as leaves go, we have the one that a grad student owns. It is in our greenhouse. So it's just one petiole, and then the leaf blade is on top. It looks like a tree. It's 13 feet tall right now. The leaf blade is 13 feet wide. And earlier this year we measured the circumference of the petiole, and it was 34 inches in circumference. So it's huge. I like to touch it and thunk it, and it's hollow on the inside.
I'm glad I am not the only person.
I go up and I thunk it almost every day because it's.
It really does look like a tree. It is this mottled green trunk. Beautiful.
This is one of the leaves.
We do have a leaf out here, and I mean they get huge. You walk under it, but it is just a single leaf stalk petiole, and then kind of this shredded umbrella on top, and it's amazing walking under those.
Yeah. We've got it cascading over a walkway, and it just feels very cozy, and you're in the woods. And the latest thing I read about it is this modeling that's on the petiole is mimicry to mimic lichens, so the herbivores, when they come in, they'll be like, oh, no, that's going to be dead or hardwood. I'll move on to something else. And plants are just so devious and smart. So.
Hey, Mark, people are asking if they can see the leaf, and we've got one back there. So.
Actually,
Oh no! Let's get this sucker.
oh, you gotta get the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's.
Play with your plant.
That's right. And this is not a large leaf.
No, not at all. In fact, this was the smaller leaf of two that were on this one corm. And the other leaf died back. This one continued on. And it was still on the plant until yesterday morning with the flower, which is rare that you get the leaf and the flower on the same structure at the same time. We chose to take it off because I didn't want it to distort the bloom as the bloom was developing. So it had to go for for prosperity's sake.
Yeah, typically you get, after you cut this all back and clean it up and weigh it and repot it and give it a rest, it'll come up with that big leaf, and that'll last for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And then that will collapse, and then sometimes it's another leaf,
Right.
sometimes a flower, but
It kind of it's the only one that knows what structure is going to come out next. So, yeah.
Do you have an idea of how long a typical plant like this will live?
So I've read online that kind of infinitely, but I would assume that after a while it will, depending on if it gets fungal damage or anything like that. But I think if you treat it right, you grow it right, it should last a very long time.
yeah, they should keep going. Unless it gets pollinated, in which case,
Right.
You're liable to lose the corm. Yeah, I mentioned that there are hardy ones here that we grow. I had one Morphophallus. I can't remember which one it was now. Peoniifolius, I think, the peony of Morphophallus, and it was flowering, and it's got a pink flower. It's actually a very pretty plant, but it's flowering in my home garden, tucked away. And I had somebody coming in to do some work on the house, a contractor, and he banging on the door. And I come out, and he said, "You've got a gas leak out here." I was like, "No, I don't have a gas." I was like, "No, I can smell it. This is what I do." I was like, "No," and I went over and showed it to him. He's like, "This is not a plant." I was like, yeah. Bend over and smell this thing. Now that flower is, a foot off the ground. It's not huge like this, but.
That's funny.
It still does have that powerful smell.
Yeah.
And you mentioned heat. The first time I ever saw this was when I was in Atlanta Botanic Garden, and they had it in kind of a smaller controlled environment, greenhouse area, not their big conservatory, kind of adjacent to that. And they said it raised, when it was really going, it raised the temperature in that room 2 degrees.
Oh, really? Wow.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. It was fun the first time that lupin bloomed because so all of cows heard about it, all of the other departments in College of Ag Life Sciences. So we got the entomologists over and they started telling us about the pollinators, and then we had the people in plant biology, and Dr. Chad Jordan made us a poster on thermogenesis, which is the heating of. We had the horticulture, so we're very interested in the cultivation of it, and then we had biochemistry people come over because they wanted to take some samples so that they could take it back to the lab and see what some of these molecular organics, whatever, were. So it really brought everybody together, and everybody had their expertise, and it was fun watching everybody watch the plant and sharing information. And so it was
Speaking of all
good
these
time.
scientific analyses of the plant, someone was asking, how were you able to so accurately predict when it would open?
So what I did was I looked back on all the pictures, which were thousands, that I took of the 3 inflorescence that had already bloomed, and just looked at the dates and predicted. Brandon, who owns lupin, he had charted a lot of it. Brandon and I texted back and forth a lot, but a lot of it was just simply looking at dates and former pictures, and just getting an idea of what stage it's at and how many days off it was the last 3 times that it bloomed, and counting back, counting forward kind of thing. So it's a little unpredictable.
And I'll say the first day it was out here with that flower bud coming up, which at that time was, pretty modest, relatively speaking to this. And I sent a picture to Tony Avon at Juniper Level Botanic Garden, who has a long history of being very interested in these and helped bring some of the first of the modern seed over, helped fund a trip to Sumatra to do that, and distributed the plants. When I sent him that first picture from that stage of how everything looked, where he predicted the 20th to the 22nd, and then when you were looking at it and looking back at those pictures, you came with the same prediction. So it is pretty set that where you get those. Now that doesn't tell you the size. And this is a pretty big one. I was looking at the sizes. This is what you said, 74 inches?
74 inches, yes.
And there are some that have been as much as 100, 108 inches tall. Some, in the 80s, but 74 seems larger than average for these.
Yeah. The first flower of lupin was 6'2", so this is 6'2". Second flower was 6'4". The third flower was 4'6", and I was thrilled because I'm 4'11", and I was taller than it. So, but what ended up happening, we think, was the leaf got all in between the second flower and the third flower. When it came in leaf, it got all the way up to the shade part of the greenhouse structure, and it burned. And so a lot of that leaf just died off, and we don't think it made enough energy for the corm to produce the next flower as a large flower. So, but it was still spectacular. It just wasn't very tall. So.
And these corms, think of a gladiolus corm, or a bulb is a similar type of thing. Don't let the botanists hear me say that, because they say it's very different. But for the average person, these things can get to be 70, 80 pounds. They can be massive. So
we weighed lupin's corm, I can't remember in between which flower event. It was 190 pounds. And we had a scale that only went up to 199 pounds. So I told Brandon, next time you're going to have to carry that thing over to the gym, because we don't have a scale that's gonna weigh that thing out next time. So.
He should have a scale. He's big into growing giant vegetables and fruits. He's a big pumpkin, watermelon, long green bean kind of person. So this fits right in with the things he likes to grow.
Yeah.
Got any other questions?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's hit
what
some
are we
questions.
doing with the pollen on this one?
I'm going to take pollen. I'm going to harvest pollen tomorrow, and we'll put it in the freezer, and then just see if any other botanical gardens or universities are interested in any pollen for any crosses that they want to make. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Do you water the corm while it's dormant?
A little bit.
A little
That's
bit.
a great question.
Yeah.
You just don't want to water it too much.
Mm.
So every 3 weeks or so, and I even with this plant, it's really smart not to heavily water it. You just kind of lightly give it some moisture on top. So
When you moved this guy out to the Arboretum, did you do anything special with the substrate, or are you doing anything special in preparation for it blooming?
not really. So my style of growing plants is basically every plant is in the same media, and then I modify my watering schedule. When we brought it out here, we brought it out in the van, and we just laid it sideways. I was worried because I'd read a lot about if you do move one that has already started to set out an inflorescence, you want to do it as early as possible because they can abort. And this one had already reached 26 inches, and I was like, oh God, this could be a disaster. But it worked out fine. And so I'm going to take that as a win.
Totally. What sort of nutrient regimen do you have it on?
We're just doing a regular 20-10-20.
How often?
Every time we water.
Okay.
Well, I should say Monday through Friday. It's a low parts per million, so
Sure.
about 100 parts per million. And then Saturday and Sundays, we'll flush it so that we don't get any high salt buildup.
Okay.
So
Nice. And someone's asking, can you predict when it will open by taking its temperature, since it does produce a temperature?
Oh, that's a good question. The temperature, as I understand it, really is when it is in flower, has opened up, and is getting that smell volatilized off for pollinators to come in. So it's not a continuous thing. It's a quick floral response.
And I want to say, just talking about aroids, plants in the Raceae family, if you come from a little bit farther north from here, you may be familiar with skunk cabbage and the flowers coming up and melting snow around them. So it's not restricted to this plant. It is, you can go up and you can see where they melt through, and that's the same process as generating enough heat to melt the snow. And there's a reason they're called skunk cabbages, because they are attracting the same types of pollinators. Now those sit on the ground, and so they get more crawling insects as opposed to flies. But yeah, that is interesting. I wonder when it starts heating up and if it's after fully open. Yeah.
Okay. Someone says that Amorphophallus peonifolius tuber, I imagine it's a corm, they say that that's edible. Is the corm on this edible?
I don't believe it is.
Has anybody ever tried? A curious grad student, perhaps?
I would hope not. We're always discouraging people from trying any fruit or anything like that out of the
No
greenhouse,
kidding.
because we spray pesticides.
Sure.
We do drench plants, so I'm going to say no.
Most aroids, they're the ones that are edible, are not edible raw. Don't eat them raw. A lot of them have oxalate crystals in them. But Amorphophallus konjac, which is certainly the most common hardy species that we can grow. In Asia, I eat that quite a bit. And what they do is, I don't know the whole process, but it gets mashed up and something done to it, and then they press it into flats, and you can buy them, and they're like almost like if you took a loofah and made them into squares or rectangles, and then when they cook them, they cut them up, and it's kind of like spongy, chewy tofu. Tastes fine. It sucks up whatever flavor it's in, but it's kind of weird looking because it's kind of almost lavendery purple. Poi is another aroid. If you go to Hawaii and you have poi at a luau, that's another aroid, one of the elephant ears.
Okay. Someone's asking if there's a place in Rhode Island they can see the flower, but let's broaden that. Are there upcoming amorphophalluses in bloom that we should maybe pay attention to and watch?
Well, there's one locally. Juniper Level Botanic Garden has one that's about looks to be a couple weeks behind here. They're calling it the Clash of the Titans. Their corn was about 20 pounds, so I'm thinking Wolfgang maybe a bigger one than theirs. But you know, how much warning do you have?
Right. But Google it, because those people that have flowers that are about to, or plants that are about to flower, they want to get the word out. They want to showcase their plants, so you could just Google what plant around me, what corpse flower around me is about to flower.
Yeah. So from knowing we're pretty much certain that what's coming up is a flower, to opening is what, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks?
I generally look at how tall it is. It's about when it gets 9 to 12 inches that I can go, okay, that's not a leaf, that's a flower. And one of the things is that the coloration is different. It's a little bit lighter in color, the flower is. And then also it has a different shape. It's more triangular than if a petiole is coming up. So that's what I go by.
From 9 inches to fully open is a matter of what? 2, 3 weeks?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
6
So,
weeks. About 6 weeks.
With anywhere a month and a half is the most warning you'd have that something is going to flower, and it usually doesn't start getting promoted until a little bit farther along, because nothing like making a big deal out of it and then having somebody trip in the greenhouse and break it off or something like that.
Or drive it over from campus to
drive
the
it over from
Arboretum and
campus.
have it break.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So I think we've got we got time for one last question, and I think it is the most important question. So, what does it smell like right now? Let's get poetic with it. Let's really do our best to describe what does it smell like.
It's not pretty.
It's not pretty. I can give you my 2 cents.
Please.
This morning, to me, it smells like the puffin exhibit at the North Carolina Zoo. If you've been out there, it's like that dead fish smell a little bit. I've got positive associations with the zoo. One of our interns actually, she said that it smells like the Asian markets, like the fish section at the Asian market. She's Asian American, so it reminds her of home. It's a very positive association. So just because it's a corpse flower doesn't mean it's all terrible and you don't want to come smell it.
That's right.
It is interesting.
That's
What do
right.
you guys think? Do you add to that maybe?
I've always thought it smelled like rotten pumpkin seeds.
Rotten pumpkin seeds.
But,
That's beautiful.
Maybe I get weird pumpkins.
Sure. No,
I
that's
don't
fair.
know. I in college one time we were having a party and we put our pumpkin, because it was around Halloween, we put it in a spare room and then forgot about it until after Thanksgiving. And there is nothing in the world that smells as bad as that did.
Really bad.
I still have a visceral response to just thinking about rotten pumpkin.
So Wolfgang smells better than a rotten pumpkin.
It does to me. I get the kind of the fish thing, but it's a little more unpleasant to me than that. Maybe because I have positive associations with Asian market as well. But yeah, I don't really get carrion so much as hot garbage kind of
Roadkill.
fish. I do get a little bit. I
Yeah.
do get a little bit of the seafood kind of smell, which maybe because it's on an island, and so that's attracts more flies. Big island, so maybe not. But yeah, it's a wild one.
Good.
And we will continue to have we do have a live stream up, so you can go to our website, jcra.ncsu.edu, and we'll have the live feed up as long as it's kind of interesting to watch it collapse and that kind of thing. So yeah, we hope you stay engaged. If you're here local, hope you come visit us. If you're not local, even if they don't have a corpse flower blooming, I hope you visit your local botanic gardens. They always need support, and they always have fantastic things going on. Check out our education programs, like Blake mentioned at the beginning of this, because we do most of them. We have either online, like these midweek programs, or we have hybrid, online or in person. So really we have a lot to offer people out there. So we do hope you'll join us for some of those things.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Mark and Diane, for
Thank
coming
you
out
so
and
much.
having this conversation about Wolfgang with
Thank
us.
you.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in at home. We are so grateful that you support this program with your viewership. We will be back next week on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. We will be sitting down with Bree Arthur, Bree the plant lady, for a little bit of garden conversations with Mark. So that'll be a lot of fun. I hope we'll see y'all then. Y'all take care.